Good morning to you all in your homes, on Zoom, and on YouTube. My name is Norm Horofker, and I'm proud to say that I'm the minister of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax, established here in 1837. Jessica Friesen is our music director, and she would normally be with us here in the sanctuary this morning, but she is, as they say, under the weather today. It's not COVID related, so don't be concerned. And Jessica, if you're watching us, I hope and wish you a speedy recovery. I'm off my game a little this morning because I'm so used to having you here assisting in so many different ways. Marie-Claude Leroux is our Director of Religious Exploration. Marie-Claude will be with us today. And Paul Galbraith is assisted by John Piccolo this morning, is our Volunteer Director and Technician. Pam Griffin-Hody is our Service Assistant. It's a great team, and thank you all. Following the guidance of our Chief Medical Officer of Health, we've suspended in-person attendance in the sanctuary for Sunday services until further notice. It's going to be a minimum of 2 weeks, and then it'll be reassessed after that. Jessica and I really missed the live audience and the live singing especially. So we'll welcome back people into the sanctuary as soon as it's safe to do so. So welcome to this service in the month of November, a month where we're exploring the theme of healing. During the service today, the chat function will be open, and I invite you to extend hospitality to anyone that you would like to chat with, particularly someone maybe you don't recognize, someone who's new or someone who's returning after a while. Last Sunday, we had guests from all the way from Africa. If you're new or returning after a long absence, you might want to leave a contact information in the chat section. Or if you're not already receiving notifications on UU Info, our main church listserv, if you can contact me at minister@uuch.ca, and I will get you onto that list. Before we proceed, we have a few announcements. The order of service went out first thing this morning, unusually late, and I apologize for that. But there are a number of announcements in there that I encourage you to read in detail. I'll just highlight a couple of them. Just a reminder that every Thursday evening at 7 p.m., we have an informal chat group on Zoom for those who are feeling isolated by the effects of COVID-19. I encourage you to join that if you would like some company. There's also a note in there about signing up for UU@UN membership. This is the way we support the United Nations as a congregation, as a faith movement. There are details in the order of service, and we need a certain number of supporters to maintain our blue ribbon status with the office at United Nations. There should be more news out shortly as we prepare for the Christmas season, and we will be again preparing Christmas hampers, something that's done with in cooperation with the Canadian Mental Health Association. So if you'd like to look at those details and watch for notices when they come out for ways that you can support that initiative. Jessica's not here to announce that we'll be restarting Soulful Sundown sometime in January. I'm not sure of the date yet. And the coffee house that was scheduled to take place last night has been delayed for 1 week due to Jessica's ill health. So that'll be next Friday. And again, there'll be announcements going out on UU Info, but it's basically 1 week from the original schedule. The same link, I think, for the Zoom connection. And there's late breaking news about our Blue Christmas service this year. We have the potential to do something really special at this time of year, and I'm excited about it. All the pieces aren't in place yet, so I don't want to build up expectations beyond what we can deliver. But if there ever was a time for a Blue Christmas, this may be it. I mean, this is going to be a Blue Christmas for a lot of people, isolated from family. We normally do Blue Christmas live at Bearley's House of the Blues and Ribs, which is the perfect venue for a Blue Christmas service. But this year it's likely to be closed. So with cooperation from the owner and the Department of Health, we're expecting to be able to do the service live from Bearley's, but there won't be a live audience in Bearley's. But we'll have all the ambiance, all the feeling of that wonderful space. And here's the big news. We have a featured musician, Renee Smith. And if you don't know Renee Smith, you need to Google Renee's name. She's an amazing African-Canadian singer, songwriter, musician, part of a dynasty of musicians in North Preston. So that's the news. Watch for details. The date is going to be December 20th, and you'll be hearing more. Thank you.
This is one of our most important features of everything that goes on at this church, and that's our canvas drive. And it's been going on all November, as I'm sure you all know. And this would be the last Sunday that we'll be giving you an update until the very end of the whole process. So I want to go through our hand stacking right from the beginning. So that was our very first hand, which was representing 10,000. And then our second hand, so that was 20,000, which was where we got to right at the beginning of our campaign. And then we moved on with the 30,000, and then the 40,000, and the 50,000. We're up to 5 hands, keep going, 60,000. And by the first week, we got up to $78,000. So that was an amazing accomplishment for that first week. The Canvas team were right out there doing their thing, and so many people increased their pledges this year. We're just so very appreciative of how much people have been giving. So then we went through the next one, 90,000 to 100,000, and that was last week. We did get up to $105,756 by last Sunday, which was actually 85% of our goal, which was amazing. So over this last week, if we go to the next hand, $111,146, which is almost the same amount that we raised last year for our whole canvas. And yet we still have at least half a dozen people, I think actually a few more, that we haven't heard from yet. So we really are going to be making more than last year. I'm not sure if we'll get up to our actual goal of 124,000 in the next little while, but we are definitely more than we've ever contributed before with this number of donors. So I really want to thank all of you very much for how generous you've been, and for the people who we are waiting to hear back from. If you said you'd get back to your canvasser, we would really appreciate it if you would get back to your canvassers. And if you haven't heard from your canvasser at all for some reason, please let me know, and I can put you in touch with who it should be, or give you the information. So thank you again to everybody who contributed. To those people who aren't comfortable yet pledging, we were hoping to get everybody this year, even for a couple of dollars, but some people just aren't comfortable, and other people, of course, in this time of pandemic have not been able to manage it. So we are very thankful that you are members of our community, and we look forward to how you'll be helping in other ways, because I know a lot of you do contribute as volunteers, or will be planning to volunteer once we get back to in-person services. So thanks again to everybody for how generous they've been this year. Back to you, Norm.
Yes, thank you everyone for your generosity, and thank you, Margaret, for your work in coordinating this, and thank you to all of the Canvas people who've been making the phone calls and contacting members of the congregation, members and friends. Okay. The Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax acknowledges that the first people to call this land sacred were the Mi'kmaq. We live and work on lands that are by law their unceded territories. And as we gather, we pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. acknowledging our history of colonization and oppression. We're called to live humbly in a right relationship with all of our neighbors. May the stories of the land on which we gather, stories of oppression and vulnerability, of pain and compassion, suffering and courage, shape how we now choose to stand with each other. It's our hope that these words will be more than a hollow sentiment. This congregation has worked to study and understand the history of the relationship between Indigenous and settler peoples. We do have a Truth and Reconciliation task team that meets monthly on the first Friday of each month at 2:30 p.m. It can be done virtually through Zoom, or when conditions allow, some people meet in person. If you'd like to know more about that team and how you might participate in it, I invite you to contact Vitska Gradstein. And now over to Pam for the chalice lighting.
We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seeker of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome.
So during this time of pandemic, we're learning to do things differently. And sometimes what seems like a problem becomes an opportunity. If you have the kind of outlook on life that Marie-Claude Leroux, our Director of Religious Exploration, has, those opportunities seem to come to the surface more readily. Hello, Marie-Claude. Now, what have you and the children and their families been up to lately?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to share with you today what our religious exploration program has been doing these past few months. In navigating COVID-19 restrictions, we've been meeting outside, in person, in various natural settings on Sunday afternoons. The RE program is focused this year on growing a deeper connection with nature while exploring the sixth source of our living tradition. The sixth source are the spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Celebrating the changing of the seasons is one of the ways that we explore these teachings. Our very first RE class this fall celebrated the autumn equinox by going apple picking and offering our gratitude for the abundance of nature and those who work diligently to ensure our access to it. We also delved a little deeper into the earth-centered tradition of paganism and learned the year-round rituals aimed to connect ourselves with Mother Earth. These are described in the Wheel of the Year, and we celebrated Samhain, the pagan New Year. Together, we created a natural altar with photos of lost loved ones and paused to honor each other's ancestors. These rituals remind us of this natural cycle of life and death. We have also, and will continue, to be exploring the Mi'kmaq culture and its integral ties to nature. While traipsing through trails and trees, there's a focus on recognizing that we are in Mi'kma'ki, that we are on ancestral lands that had been conserved for thousands of years, and that nature provides us with gifts to be treated with respect and gratitude. These principles are combined with learning Mi'kmaq legends and the ancient skills of survival that depended on a connection with nature. We've learned about Glooskap and his grandmother Nugumi while forging fir needles for tea on a trail at the Glooskap First Nation community. We enacted the legend of the Thundermaker and explored a petroglyph in the Bedford Barrens that's over 500 years old.
Oh.
As importantly, we're engaging with each other and nature that surrounds us. We've climbed fallen trees, squatted down to peer into tree hollows, and examined exposed root systems. We've spent time exploring rock pools at the beach, collecting periwinkles and finding barnacles. We've collected leaves to press, do colorful rubbings, transform into lanterns, and of course, jump into. We've noticed mushrooms of all shapes and sizes, bounced on and through a couple times, swaths of moss, pricked our fingers on chestnut burrs, and rolled down hills. All in all, while connecting to this incredible interdependent web of all existence, our gatherings have been bringing us closer to each other and to the earth that sustains us. It's been lovely.
On behalf of the congregation, I want to thank Marie-Claude for the inspiration that you bring to the religious exploration program and for our children and our youth. I can speak for myself only when I say that I need to get out more into the natural environment of Nova Scotia. Looking at those pictures made me realize how much I'm missing as I stay indoors and miss that opportunity to be outside. I need to be in that natural environment for my own spiritual well-being and growth. And now we take a special time to reflect on our joys and our sorrows. It's a sacred time in our service. It's a time we set apart to honor the many sorrows and the many joys that you, the congregation, are living, and to acknowledge the mutual support of the community. Today, I'll light one candle for all those who are here with us or in our thoughts, who are struggling mentally, physically, financially, or emotionally. And I light a second candle for all the joys that are in the room. My room, your room, the Zoom room. The big joys that come along only infrequently, and the little joys that are blessed, that we are blessed by every day if we have eyes and ears to see them and hear them. And I light one candle again for all the members and friends of our community who are shut in long-term care homes. I light a candle, one candle for John Patterson and Marie Davis and Arisha Cox, Norm Sabowitz and Dr. Philip Welch, and a special welcome this morning to Ann Wood, who is able to join us to help with the staff at Melville Lodge. I hope she'll be around for our coffee hour afterwards. Each week, I invite anyone with a joy or a sorrow to share at this time to relay their thoughts to me by email. This time, last week, I lit a candle for Sylvia Mattinson, who was scheduled for knee surgery on Thursday of last week after waiting well over a year for this important surgery. Unfortunately, Sylvia heard the day before the surgery was scheduled that it was being postponed due to an incident of COVID-19 involving her surgeon. So this morning we light a candle for Sylvia in the hope that her surgery will be quickly rescheduled. Now later, when we stop live streaming on YouTube and before the coffee hour begins, I'll invite anyone else to share a joy or a sorrow if they would like to do so. So we normally have a reflective hymn at this time, and Jessica chose a beautiful Christian hymn, Abide With Me. Unfortunately, you won't hear the hymn this morning. We didn't have time to arrange an alternative. But I want to take a few minutes to talk about that hymn. It's a hymn that's often chosen for funerals, and I realize it would stir some emotions, maybe good or bad, within some of us, memories of past experiences with this very powerful hymn. The hymn is a prayer for God to remain present with the speaker throughout life, throughout trials, even through death. The opening line alludes to Luke 24, verse 29, "Abide with us, for it is a short evening and the day is far spent," as Jesus' disciples ask him to stay with them. And the penultimate verse draws on the text from 1 Corinthians 15:55. "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" There's a true story attached to this hymn, and in the belief that we all love a story, I'll share it with you now. Henry Francis Lyte composed the hymn in 1820. He did so while visiting a dying friend. As Lyte sat with the dying man, his friend kept repeating the phrase, "Abide with me." And after leaving his friend's bedside, Lyte wrote the hymn and gave a copy of it to his friend's family. The belief is that when Lyte felt his own life end approaching, 27 years later at the age of 54, as he developed tuberculosis, he recalled those lines that he had written so many years before, and he gave a copy of the words to members of his family. On November the 20th in 1847, Lyte died, and the hymn was sung for the very first time at his funeral. So what can we take from this hymn today? Some of you have a very personal relationship with the God of your understanding, and the interpretation of the hymn will be much as Lyte intended. For others this morning, I ask you to look at this hymn perhaps in a new way. What is Lyte asking to abide with? What's he asking to abide with him when he writes, "I triumph still if thou abide with me"? In the context of today's service, perhaps it is our moral values that we pray will abide with us and sustain us. If we maintain our moral compass, our sense of right and wrong, our sense that life has meaning, our faith in the power of love, then we can endure any calamity. This is the God that I hope will abide with us all. And it's the separation from this God that is moral injury that I'll be talking about later. I venture that most of you are familiar with the words. I think I'll just read the last verse. "I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me." If we maintain our sense of love, if we maintain our sense of moral values and right and wrong through to the very end of our lives, we triumph. And that wasn't even my sermon. Hold on. As we conclude our joys and sorrows, May the joys and sorrows, both those acknowledged here this morning and those held in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, weave us together in the interdependent community that is UUCH. And now Pam has a reading for us, a reminder that love can abide with us and be our guide.
This is called Psalm 23 for this moment. Many of you will have had to memorize the 23rd Psalm growing up, as I did. This is a different version, a UU version. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide always, shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still restoring waters nearby that somehow I had not noticed. And so love quietly sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well, when love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere, everywhere I go. I live in a house of love, love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will.
Thank you, Pam. A news story caught my eye in September of this year. The Canadian military announcement that they would be spending millions of dollars to study something called moral injury. It's the first time that I had heard that term, moral injury, and I wanted to know more. It sounded to me like a secular attempt to solve a spiritual problem. This morning, I want to explore that idea of moral injury and some thoughts on what might sustain Unitarian Universalists in the face of moral injury. Moral injury is a concept that developed first out of the psychological injuries suffered by military personnel in the Vietnam War. It got more traction and more study with the Iraq War. It became a significant target of military-funded research in the last 10 years or so. There was a realization that military personnel were suffering from psychological injuries that were not related, nor did they respond to the treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder. Where PTSD usually is the result of trauma that threatens the life of the individual, or their comrades, or their family, moral injury is the result of events that threaten the long-held values of the individual. Values that, until the event, provided a framework of understanding of how the world functions. Here's a simple definition of moral injury that emerged in the literature about 2010. Moral injury is the deep psychological, spiritual, and social impact that occurs when a person perpetuates, fails to prevent, witnesses, or is the victim of acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs and expectations, a violation of one's sense of moral order. Moral injury is not a pathology. It's a normal human response when the framework of values that we build our life on crumbles before us. Most of the research into moral injury has been done by the military, where there's sufficient government funding. But the problem exists in other civilian realms. In the medical field, even as I speak, as people are dying of the pandemic and our healthcare workers struggle making very difficult decisions. In the field of social work, where impossibly large caseloads and bureaucracy get in the way of the care of defenseless children. In the criminal justice system, where we incarcerate Indigenous and Black individuals at rates many times that of people of European ancestry. A military example that was cited was the effect on a soldier who was tasked with searching vehicles in Iraq for explosive materials and weapons at a roadblock. In the course of the work, day after day, the soldier was confronted with young children in vehicles being transported against their will, being trafficked for sexual or other purposes. But the soldier's orders were to search for weapons. He was powerless to do anything about the evil that was before him every day. An example in civilian life of moral injury to a child. A young child is scarred when his parents, who are addicted to drugs, tell him to steal money from his own grandfather's store and turn the money over to them. The Western world suffered a moral injury with the picture of the body of a 3-year-old Syrian boy, Alan Kurdi, washed up on the beach in the Mediterranean Sea in 2015. How could we? How can we still allow such things to happen? It only seems to matter to cause us real pain when we see those images. Moral injury is painful. And as C.S. Lewis has said, pain insists on being attended to. You see, God whispers to us in our pleasures. God speaks to us in our consciences. But God shouts at us in our pains. Pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Here ends the quote. There's been many times in history when moral injury on a large scale has totally destroyed the veneer of civilization. We rely on a social contract of what's agreed to being right and what's agreed to being wrong, what is noble and what is base, what is worthy of sacrifice and what is not. During times of all-out warfare, during times of severe pestilence, whole societies can lose their sense of shared values and descend into violent revolution and anarchy. As I saw that article on the Canadian military investing millions of dollars to study moral injury, I felt a frustration at the apparent growing irrelevance of religion. Moral injury is something that our military should be studying. The growing irrelevance of religion in our increasingly secular society. And here, with the idea of moral injury as a case of an obvious spiritual problem being tackled in what could become an entirely secular manner. It turns out that going to war isn't good for your soul, Who could have known that? I imagine a group of military psychologists developing therapies and medications to help someone to recover from moral injury without ever dealing with the root cause of moral injury, treating the symptoms, not the cause, looking for a pill to cure moral injury. I realize how complex the problem is, and I respect the capabilities of our military. Ironically, the role of military chaplain is one of the few remaining professional religious positions that is funded by a secular organization and that carries some prestige. The role of chaplains in hospitals, by contrast, has been downplayed and minimized over the decades to where the chaplain in a hospital is often a token afterthought. But I know I digress. The point is that when the moral ground beneath our feet falls away, we will not find the answer in a psychological or the psychiatric sciences. As Reverend Robert Walsh has written, when the great plates slip and the earth shivers and the flaw is seen to lie in what you trusted most, look not to more solidity, to weighty slabs, but trust more the tensile strands of love that bend and stretch. Throughout most of recorded human history, religion and the sacred texts associated with them have provided the basis for a unifying sense of morality, an explicit set of rules defining what is right and what is wrong and how the world is intended to function as prescribed by God. Some believe in these sacred texts and believe they were directly inspired by God or even dictated by agents of God. Another interpretation is that these texts are human creations designed to codify behavior to ensure consistent, cohesive communities. But beneath that level is the realm of the evolutionary psychologist, who would explain all of human morality as codified in these sacred texts as a response to evolutionary pressures. We were shocked by the image of Alan Kurdi washed up on the beach because we have evolved to protect our children, thereby ensuring the survival of our genes and our species. Viktor Frankl wrote a dissenting opinion. He wrote, according to one definition, meanings and values are nothing but reaction formations and defense mechanisms. The result, you will, of evolutionary pressure. But Frankl said, as for myself, I would not be willing to live for the sake of my reaction formations, even less to die for the sake of my defense mechanisms. Here ends the quote. Current treatment for moral injury involves counseling for self-forgiveness and acceptance. It also includes reconnecting and recommitting to a set of values. Life is entirely meaningless without a sense of values. The values provide the meaning, and it is the meaning making that provides the solid ground that can restore mental health. Patients recovering from moral injury are called upon to make meaning for themselves. And again, I'll quote Viktor Frankl. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Meaning at the level that will sustain you through trauma is the result of the decisions that you make based on your life experience. You must actively decide to give meaning to your life. And the meaning you give and live by can never be denied by another person never be contradicted by the circumstances of your life. So now let's revisit that opening hymn, Abide With Me. Stay with me here for a while. Can we envision God as love? That was the great insight of our universalist ancestors. God as synonymous with love. What else is there to give meaning to our lives other than love? I'm not speaking here of the fickle romantic love, but I'm speaking in the words of Scott Peck of love as the willingness to extend ourselves for the spiritual growth of ourselves and another human being. Love as the care for our beautiful planet Earth, the web of all existence of which we are a part. It has been said that love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Perhaps then moral injury is the forced separation from love and a belief in the overarching power of love in the universe. I'm suggesting that love is the one thing we need to abide with us and sustain us through life. And this morning, I hope that love will abide with you always. Amen. At this time, Jessica had prepared a beautiful interlude, but we don't have Jessica with us, so I have to go rather jarringly into the morning's offering. This is a time in the service when in pre-COVID times, we would pass the collection plate. Instead, this morning, I have this message from the board of this church. The UUCH community has been so loving and generous during this strange and unsettling year. Many thanks to all of those who have kept our financial house in good order. Your giving is so appreciated. We have continued to pay staff. We offer our Saturday brunch and bag lunch and stock our food banks. Thanks to your generosity. Going forward, we know we can continue to count on you. And if you would like to make a donation at this time, you can do so by e-transfer to treasurer@uuch.ca. If you prefer to do so by check, you can mail the check to the church address. This message with gratitude from your board of directors. And once again, we're bypassing a hymn. Sad to say. Now comes time to extinguish the chalice and the closing words. Before I extinguish the chalice in our sanctuary, I offer these words. We have come into one another's presence today, seeking some part of ourselves, knowing that we cannot fully live if we live for ourselves alone. May that knowledge abide with you. May you follow the guidance of love, and may love be strong in you, strong enough to sustain you in joy through the week ahead. Amen. Thank you all who attended the service today by Zoom or by YouTube. I'll say goodbye now to those who joined us on YouTube as we end live streaming. We'll be back with you in a minute for our virtual coffee hour. Thank you again, and go in peace.